Captain Jake Morrison gripped the command chair as another explosion rocked the defense station above New Geneva Colony. The view screen showed dozens of alien ships moving like deadly shadows against the stars. Their dark hulls gleamed with weapon ports that spat death at everything human. Jake had been fighting the HFY for 3 years now, but he had never seen so many of their ships in one place. "Shields down to 30%, called out his weapons officer. The young man's voice shook as he watched his displays. There, breaking through the outer defense grid. Jake watched helplessly as human ships exploded one after another. Each flash of light meant hundreds of his people were dead. The HFY had been hunting humans across the galaxy for decades. They destroyed every human colony they found and took no prisoners. Nobody knew why they wanted humanity extinct, but their goal was clear. "All ships fall back to defensive line 2, Jake ordered into his communicator. Only 12 human vessels remained from the original 40. The aliens had superior technology and seemed to know exactly how to counter every human tactic. It was like fighting an enemy that could see the future. On the planet below, 3 million colonists waited for evacuation that would never come. The transport ships had been destroyed in the first wave of attacks. Jake's small fleet was all that stood between the civilians and complete annihilation. He had sworn an oath to protect those people, and he would die before breaking it. Admiral Lisa Grant's voice crackled through the static on the emergency channel. She was commanding the defense of Earth itself from a bunker deep underground. "All remaining fleet commanders, this is Admiral Grant. Enemy forces are moving on Earth. We estimate 48 hours before they reach our home system." Jake felt ice in his stomach. If Earth fell, then humanity was finished. There were no more reinforcements coming and no secret weapons to deploy. The human race had fought bravely, but they were simply outmatched by an enemy that had conquered a dozen other species before them. "Admiral, we're reading massive enemy reinforcements jumping into the New Geneva system," reported Lieutenant Commander Ryan Hayes from his position at the sensor station. Ryan was young, but brilliant at reading enemy patterns. "At least 50 more ships just appeared. They're moving to surround us." The tactical display showed the horrible truth. Red dots representing enemy vessels completely surrounded the small cluster of blue dots that marked human ships. There was no escape route and no hope of victory. Jake had seen this formation before. The HFY were preparing for what they called a cleansing operation. They would destroy every human ship and then glass the planet's surface with orbital bombardment. "Captain, incoming transmission," called the communications officer. "It's encrypted and coming from deep space. The signal is weak, but the computer says it's definitely human in origin." Jake frowned. There should be no human ships in deep space. All remaining vessels were either defending colonies or falling back toward Earth. "Put it through," he ordered. Static filled the bridge speakers. Then through the interference came a single word spoken in a human voice. "Vengeance." Ryan's fingers flew over his console as he tried to trace the signal. "Captain, the transmission originated from coordinates in the outer rim. That's at least 300 light years from here. The signal took months to reach us." "Any ship identification?" Jake asked. "Negative, sir, but wait." Ryan's eyes widened as he studied his readings. "Captain, the transmission signature matches something in our database. It's the HMS Retribution." Jake felt his heart skip. Every human knew that name. The Retribution had been humanity's most advanced warship 70 years ago during the First Contact War. The ship had vanished during a classified mission and was presumed destroyed. Military records about the vessel were still sealed, but rumors spoke of experimental weapons that could level entire fleets. Admiral Grant's voice came through the speakers again. "All commands be advised. Long-range sensors detect massive HFY fleet movements toward Earth. We're looking at complete species extinction within 72 hours unless something changes." Jake stared at the coordinates displayed on his screen. The location was in empty space far from any known human territory. If the retribution was really out there after all these years, then maybe humanity still had a chance. But reaching those coordinates would mean abandoning New Geneva Colony to its fate. Another explosion shook the station as Kethvar weapons found their mark. Warning lights flashed red across every console. Jake's tactical officer reported that enemy boarding parties were cutting through the station's hull. In minutes, the aliens would be inside hunting down every human they could find. "Admiral Grant, this is Captain Morrison," Jake said into his communicator. "I'm requesting permission to investigate the deep space transmission. If the retribution is out there, we need to find it. Permission granted, Captain," came the immediate reply. "Take your fastest ship and go. Godspeed," Jake turned to his crew. "All hands prepare for emergency departure. We're leaving the system as..." His ship accelerated away from the doomed colony. Jake watched the Kethvar fleet close in for the kill. Somewhere in the darkness between stars lay humanity's last hope. The USS Pathfinder dropped out of hyperspace at the coordinates from the mysterious transmission. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge scanning the empty starfield ahead. For 3 days they had traveled through the void beyond human space. Now they floated in what should have been completely empty vacuum. "Sensors show nothing, Captain," reported Dr. Elena Cross from the science station. The xenobiologist had volunteered for the mission despite having no military training. Her expertise with alien technology made her valuable for whatever they might find. "Wait, I'm detecting some kind of energy signature. It's very faint." Tech specialist Ben Turner worked at his console trying to boost the sensor array. His hands moved quickly over the controls as he fine-tuned the detection systems. "There, Captain. Bearing 27 Mark 4. Distance approximately 50,000 kilometers. Jake squinted at the main screen but saw only stars. "I don't see anything. Are you sure about those readings?" "Positive, sir," Ben replied. "The computer shows a massive structure, but it's somehow masked from visual detection. Some kind of cloaking system, but not like anything in our database." Dr. Cross looked up from her instruments with excitement in her eyes. "Captain, these energy readings are incredible. Whatever is out there, it's huge. I'm reading power signatures, equivalent to a small star. And the technology creating this cloak is far beyond anything humans have developed." Jake ordered the helm to move toward the coordinates. As they approached, Ben's readings grew stronger. The invisible object was definitely there, but remained completely hidden from sight. Only the ship's most sensitive instruments could detect its presence. "Try cycling through different visual spectrums," Jake suggested. "Maybe we can see it in infrared or ultraviolet?" Ben's fingers danced across his controls. Suddenly, the main screen flickered and changed. Where empty space had been moments before, now stood a massive space station. The structure was easily 10 kilometers long and covered in strange geometric patterns. Its hull was made from some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. "My God," whispered Dr. Cross. "That architecture isn't human. It's not Kethvar either. This is something completely different." The station hung motionless in space like a sleeping giant. Docking bays dotted its surface and strange towers projected from its hull. Most importantly, Jake could see a familiar shape nestled in the station's central bay. The sleek lines of a human warship were unmistakable. "Ben, scan that docked vessel," Jake ordered. "I want to know if it's really the Retribution." The tech specialist ran detailed scans on the ship in the docking bay. His excitement grew as the results came in. "Captain, it's definitely human construction. The hull configuration matches archived blueprints for the HMS Retribution. But, sir, the ship appears to be completely intact after 70 years. Jake felt a mix of hope and confusion. If the Retribution had found this station decades ago, then where was her crew? Why had they never returned to help humanity fight the Kethvar? And most importantly, what was this massive alien structure? "Take us in slowly," Jake commanded. "Launch a probe first. I want to know what we're dealing with before we get too close. The probe sped toward the station and began transmitting data. Back to the Pathfinder. Dr. Cross studied the readings with growing amazement. Captain, this station is ancient. Carbon dating suggests it's at least 10,000 years old. But the power systems are still active. The technology keeping this thing running is beyond anything I've ever seen. The probe detected docking ports. That seemed designed for human ships. Whoever built this station had either studied human technology or expected human visitors. Jake made the decision to dock with the structure despite the obvious risks. As the Pathfinder connected to the station's docking clamps, Ben detected something unexpected. Captain, I'm reading atmosphere inside the station. Oxygen-nitrogen mix. Suitable for humans. Temperature is comfortable and there's artificial gravity. That's impossible, Dr. Cross said. How could an alien station have human-compatible life support? Jake gathered his team in the docking bay. They would board the station in full environmental suits despite the apparently safe atmosphere. He had no intention of taking unnecessary risks with an unknown alien technology. The airlock cycled open, and they stepped into a corridor that defied explanation. The walls were covered in symbols from dozens of different languages. Some Jake recognized as human writing, but others were completely alien. The corridor stretched into the distance, lit by panels that gave off a soft blue glow. This place is like a museum, Dr. Cross observed. Look at these displays. There are artifacts from species I've never seen before. Weapons, technology, art, and what looks like scientific instruments. Ben scanned the walls with his instruments. Captain, these aren't just displays. The technology here is functional. I'm reading active power sources in almost everything we're seeing. It's like someone collected the greatest achievements of multiple civilizations and put them all in one place. They made their way deeper into the station, following signs that seemed to point toward the central docking bay where the Retribution waited. Along the way, they passed chambers filled with incredible devices. Some rooms contained what looked like advanced computers, while others held weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Jake, look at this, Dr. Cross called out. She stood before a large display showing star charts. These maps show the location of hundreds of solar systems. And look here. Many of them are marked with a symbol that looks like the HFY insignia. Jake studied the display more carefully. Each marked system had a date notation and a status indicator. Most showed red symbols which seemed to indicate destruction or abandonment. Elena, this looks like a record of HFY conquests. They've been destroying civilizations for thousands of years, which means, Ben added grimly, that we're not their first target. They've done this before to dozens of other species. The realization hit them all at once. Humanity was just the latest victim in a campaign of galactic genocide that had been going on for millennia. The HFY were not just conquerors, they were exterminators who wiped out entire species for reasons no one understood. They reached the central chamber where the HMS Retribution sat in its docking cradle. The ship looked exactly as it had 70 years ago when it vanished. Its hull was pristine and its weapon systems appeared fully functional. Ben, scan the ship for life signs, Jake ordered. The readings that came back were unexpected. Captain, I'm detecting dozens of human life signs aboard the Retribution. They're all in some kind of suspended animation, but they're definitely alive. Jake Morrison led his team through the airlock, connecting the alien station to the HMS Retribution. The ship's corridors were dark, but emergency lighting activated as they moved through the passages. Everything appeared exactly as it would have, 70 years ago, when the vessel first vanished. Dr. Elena Cross used her scanner to track the life signs Ben Turner had detected. The signals are coming from the medical bay, Captain. It looks like the entire crew is in cryogenic suspension. They made their way through the familiar layout of a human warship. Jake had served on vessels like this one and knew exactly where to find the medical facilities. The corridors felt strange and empty, but there was no sign of damage or violence. Whatever had happened to bring the Retribution to this place, It had not involved a battle. The medical bay doors opened to reveal rows of cryogenic pods. Each transparent chamber contained a human figure frozen in suspended animation. Status lights on every pod showed green, indicating that the occupants were alive and stable. Jake counted 43 crew members sleeping peacefully after 7 decades. "These readings are incredible," Dr. Cross said as she examined the nearest pods. "Their life signs are perfect. Whatever technology is maintaining these systems, it's far superior to anything we have. Human cryogenic pods can only sustain life for a few years at most." Ben studied the control systems that managed the sleeping crew. "Captain, I think I can wake one of them up safely. The computer shows a standard revival procedure, but the technology has been modified somehow. It should take about 10 minutes. Jake looked at the nameplate on the nearest pod. "Commander Paul Stone, First Officer." He remembered reading about Stone in the military archives. The man had been a decorated veteran of the First Contact War and one of humanity's most respected space officers. "Bring him back," Jake decided. "We need answers about what happened here." Ben initiated the revival sequence and the pod began to hum with activity. Warming systems activated and medical scanners monitored every aspect of Stone's condition as his body slowly returned to normal function. Jake watched anxiously as the man who had been sleeping for 70 years began to stir. Commander Stone's eyes opened slowly and focused on the faces looking down at him. His voice was weak but clear when he spoke. "Are you real? Or am I dreaming? Again?" "You're awake, Commander," Jake replied. "I'm Captain Morrison of the USS Pathfinder. What's the last thing you remember?" Stone sat up carefully in the pod and looked around the medical bay. His eyes fell on his sleeping crewmates and understanding dawned on his face. "We found it, Captain. We actually found it. How long have we been asleep?" 70 years, Dr. Cross told him gently. "Commander, we need to know what happened. Humanity is facing extinction. The Kethvar are about to destroy Earth, and we're hoping the retribution can help us stop them." Stone's expression grew grim. 70 years and they're still out there. We hoped our sacrifice would end this war, but it seems we were too late." He climbed out of the pod and steadied himself against the wall. "Captain, I need to show you something. The station we're docked with contains a weapon that could destroy the Kethvar completely." Jake felt his pulse quicken. "What kind of weapon?" "Follow me," Stone said as he led them toward the ship's central computer core. "But first, you need to understand what we discovered about our enemy. The Kethvar aren't just conquerors, Captain. They're collectors. They destroy civilizations and take their technology for themselves." As they walked through the ship, Stone explained what his crew had learned during their decades of exploration. The alien station was built by a species called the Eternal Builders, who had fought the Kethvar thousands of years ago. Before their civilization fell, they had created this repository to preserve the knowledge and weapons of every species the Kethvar destroyed. "The station is a tomb and a treasure vault," Stone continued. "Every civilization that ever stood against the Kethvar is represented here. Their art, their science, their weapons, everything they created before being wiped out, they reached the computer core, where Stone activated the main display systems. The screens showed technical diagrams of a massive device located deep within the station. The weapon was called the Genesis Engine, and it had the power to rewrite matter at the quantum level. This device can unmake anything it targets, Stone explained. Ships' planets' entire star systems can be reduced to basic particles in seconds. But activating it requires a power source that no normal technology can provide. Dr. Cross studied the weapon specifications with growing amazement and horror. "Commander, this thing could destroy the entire Kethvar fleet instantly. But what kind of power source does it need?" Stone's expression grew dark. "Life force, Captain. The Genesis engine draws its power from conscious minds. To fire it once requires The complete sacrifice of an entire ship's crew. Their life energy becomes the fuel that powers the weapon. Jake felt sick. You're talking about mass suicide. We volunteered for a one-way mission, Stone replied firmly. Every person on this ship knew we might never return home. We came here to find a way to save humanity, and we found it. The question is whether you're willing to pay the price. Ben had been studying the weapon schematics on another display. Commander, there has to be another way. What if we found a different power source or modified the system somehow? We've spent 70 years trying to solve that problem, Stone told him. Our ship's AI has run millions of simulations, but every scenario ends the same way. The weapon works perfectly, but it demands the ultimate sacrifice from those who use it. Jake stared at the weapon diagrams, feeling the weight of an impossible decision. Humanity was facing extinction, but saving his species would require him to order the death of everyone under his command. It was a choice no person should ever have to make. There's something else you need to know, Stone continued. The HFY know about this station. They've been searching for it for centuries. If they find us here, they'll destroy the Genesis engine and eliminate humanity's last hope. As if summoned by his words, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Ben rushed to a nearby console and checked the sensor readings. His face went pale as he read the display. Captain, we have company, Ben reported. Multiple HFY ships just dropped out of hyperspace. They've found us. Commander Stone rushed to the nearest communication panel and began reviving more of his crew from cryogenic sleep. We need Chief Engineer Marie Collins awake immediately, he told Jake Morrison. She's been working on modifications to the Genesis engine for decades. The ship shuddered as HFY weapons struck the alien station's shields. Through the viewports, Jake could see dozens of enemy vessels surrounding the ancient structure. Their dark hulls gleamed with weapon ports that charged with deadly energy. How long do we have? Dr. Elena Cross asked as she watched the tactical display. Ben Turner checked his readings from the Pathfinder's sensors. The station's shields are holding, but they won't last forever, Captain. I'm reading massive power buildup in the enemy ships. They're preparing for a sustained bombardment. Marie Collins emerged from her cryogenic pod looking alert, despite having slept for 70 years. She was a small woman with graying hair, but her eyes burned with intelligence and determination. Paul, what's our situation? She asked Stone as she quickly dressed. We have visitors, Marie, Stone replied. The HFY found us, and there's a human ship here that needs our help. Captain Morrison, this is Chief Engineer Collins. She's the only person who truly understands how the Genesis engine works. Marie studied Jake with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through him. So you're here for the weapon, Captain. Good, because we finally found a way to make it work without killing everyone. Jake felt hope surge in his chest. You found an alternative power source? Not exactly, Marie replied as she led them toward the station's central core. The Genesis engine still requires a human consciousness to power it, but we discovered a way to use just one person instead of an entire crew. The volunteer would undergo neural integration with the weapon system. Dr. Cross frowned as she tried to understand the implications. What exactly does neural integration mean? Marie's expression grew somber. The person's consciousness merges completely with the Genesis engine. Their human body dies, but their mind becomes part of the weapon system. They would exist as pure thought and energy capable of controlling the device with perfect precision. So they would still die, Jake said, flatly. Their human existence would end, yes, Marie admitted. But they would continue as something new, something more than human. We've run simulations, and the integrated consciousness retains all memories and personality. They would still be themselves, just in a very different form. The station rocked again as more HFY weapons found their mark. Warning lights flashed. Throughout the corridors, and the artificial gravity fluctuated. They were running out of time to make a decision. There's more, Marie continued as they reached the Genesis engine chamber. I've been studying the data left by the Eternal Builders. They built safeguards into their technology to prevent total destruction. I believe I can modify the weapon to target only military vessels while sparing civilian populations, the Genesis. Engine stood before them like a mechanical god. The device was a sphere of crystalline metal 20 meters across, suspended in a web of energy conduits. Power flowed through the crystal matrix in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Jake could feel the weapon's potential even while inactive. The targeting system can distinguish between military and civilian targets, Marie explained. Instead of destroying entire worlds, we could eliminate only the HFY war machine. Their planets and non-combatant population would survive, Doctor. Cross examined the weapon with scientific fascination. This technology is incredible, Marie. But are you certain about the neural integration process? Has anyone ever attempted it? We've run countless simulations, Marie replied. The process should work, but it's never been tested with a real person. The volunteer would be taking a leap into the unknown. Stone joined them in the chamber carrying a data pad with tactical information. Captain, the HFY are bringing their heaviest ships into position. We're facing at least 50 vessels, including some of their planet-killer-class dreadnoughts. Jake studied the tactical display showing the enemy fleet positions. The aliens had them completely surrounded and were moving methodically to destroy the station's defenses. In less than an hour, they would break through and capture or destroy the Genesis engine. How long would the integration process take? Jake asked. About 30 minutes, Marie answered. But we need to begin preparations now. The weapon system has to be calibrated for human neural patterns, and that takes time. Ben Turner had been studying the Genesis engine's control systems. Captain, I volunteer for the integration. My technical background makes me the logical choice. I understand the systems better than anyone except Chief Collins. Absolutely not, Jake replied firmly. I'm the ranking officer here. If someone has to make this sacrifice, it should be me, Dr. Cross stepped forward. Actually, I should be the one. My scientific training might help me adapt to the integration process better than either of you. Stone listened to their debate with growing concern. Captain, while you're arguing, the HFY are getting closer to breaking through our defenses. Someone needs to make a decision quickly. Another massive explosion shook the station. Through the chamber's viewport, Jake could see HFY fighter craft swarming around the structure's outer defenses. The enemy was preparing for a full assault that would overwhelm the ancient shields within minutes. Marie began activating the Genesis engine's preparation systems. Whoever volunteers needs to get into the integration chamber now. The calibration process can't wait any longer. Jake looked at his team members, knowing that one of them would have to die to save humanity. The weight of command had never felt heavier than it did in this moment. Every person under his protection was willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. I need a few minutes to think, Jake said. Marie, continue your preparations. Ben, keep monitoring the HFY fleet. Elena, help Stone coordinate our defenses. As his team scattered to their tasks, Jake stared at the Genesis engine and wondered if they were making the right choice. The weapon could save humanity, but at a cost that seemed almost too high to pay. Yet with Earth facing extinction, there might be no other option. The decision would have to be made soon, because the HFY were almost through the station's defenses. In minutes, enemy troops would be boarding the structure and hunting for the bait, weapon that could end their reign of terror across the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison stood before the Genesis engine, feeling the weight of humanity's survival on his shoulders. The massive crystalline sphere hummed with barely contained power, while Chief Engineer Marie Collins worked frantically to complete the calibration process. Time was running out, and the HFY fleet was breaking through the station's outer defenses. Captain, the enemy has breached sections 12 through 15, Commander Stone reported from his position at the tactical console. They're sending boarding parties to secure the weapon chamber. We have maybe 20 minutes before they reach us. Jake watched his team prepare for their final battle. Dr. Elena Cross was helping Stone set up defensive positions while Ben Turner monitored the integration systems. Each person had volunteered to undergo the neural merger that would power the Genesis engine, but Jake knew the choice had to be his as commanding officer. "Marie, how much longer do you need?" Jake asked. 10 more minutes for full calibration," she replied without looking up from her controls. "But Captain, we can't wait much longer. The integration process itself takes 15 minutes, and we need to start before the HFY reach this chamber." The sound of weapons fire echoed through the station's corridors. Human voices mixed with the harsh, clicking language of the aliens. As the battle moved closer to their position, Stone had armed himself with a plasma rifle and was checking the defensive barriers they had erected around the Genesis engine. "They're coming through Section 10 now," Stone announced. "I count at least 50 enemy soldiers moving toward us. We can hold them for a while, but not indefinitely," Jake made his decision. "I'll undergo the integration. As captain, it's my responsibility." "No, sir," Ben Turner interrupted firmly. "You're needed to coordinate the defense and command the fleet after this is over. I'm the best choice because I understand the technical systems." Dr. Cross stepped forward. "Ben, you're too valuable as our technical specialist. I should do it. My scientific background gives me the best chance of surviving the integration process." The argument was interrupted by an explosion that shook the entire chamber. Emergency lighting flickered and sparks flew from damaged control panels. Through the chamber's blast doors, they could hear HFY soldiers getting closer with each passing minute. "Somebody has to decide now," Marie called out desperately. "The calibration is almost complete, but I need to know who's going into the integration." "Chamber!" Ben Turner suddenly grabbed his chest and stumbled backward. A HFY energy bolt had found its mark through a gap in the defensive barriers. He looked down at the smoking hole in his uniform and smiled grimly. "Looks like the choice just got made for us." Jake rushed to Ben's side but could see immediately that the wound was fatal. The energy weapon had burned through his chest cavity and damaged vital organs beyond any hope of medical treatment. Ben had minutes to live at most. "Get me to the integration chamber." Ben gasped. "If I'm going to die anyway, let me save humanity while I do it." Marie looked at Jake for confirmation. The captain nodded reluctantly, knowing that Ben was right. There was no time to save him, and his sacrifice could power the weapon that would destroy the HFY fleet. They carried Ben to the integration chamber at the heart of the Genesis engine. The chamber was a sphere of pure crystal surrounded by energy conduits that pulsed with blue light. Marie opened the chamber door and helped Ben inside despite his weakening condition. "Just lie back and try to stay calm," Marie instructed. "The neural integration will begin automatically once I seal the chamber. You'll feel a tingling sensation as your consciousness merges with the weapon system." Ben managed a weak smile. "Tell my family I died fighting for humanity's future, and Jake, make sure you use this weapon to protect other species from what happened to us." The chamber door sealed with a soft hiss. Through the transparent crystal walls, they could see Ben lying peacefully as energy began to flow around his body. His life signs appeared on Marie's monitors, showing his brain activity changing in ways no human had ever experienced. "The integration is beginning," Marie announced. "His neural patterns are synchronizing with the Genesis engine's control matrix. Brain activity is increasing far beyond normal human levels." Jake watched in fascination and horror as his friend underwent a transformation beyond anything medical science had thought possible. Ben's body began to glow with the same blue energy that powered the weapon system. His human form started to fade as his consciousness expanded into the crystalline matrix. "Neural integration at 50%, Marie reported. "His mind is merging with the weapon's targeting systems. He should be able to perceive every HFY ship in the galaxy once the process completes." The sound of weapons fire grew louder as HFY soldiers fought their way through the station's final defensive positions. Stone called out coordinates as enemy troops broke through barriers that had protected the Genesis engine chamber for millennia. "They're at the main entrance," Stone shouted. "I can hold them for maybe 5 more minutes," Dr. Cross had taken position. behind an overturned console and was firing at HFY soldiers with a captured plasma weapon. Her scientific training had not prepared her for combat, but she fought with the desperation of someone protecting humanity's last hope. Integration at 75%, Marie announced. The transformation is accelerating. Ben's consciousness is expanding throughout the entire weapon system. Jake could no longer see Ben's physical form inside the integration chamber. The human body had dissolved into pure energy that flowed through the Genesis engine's crystal matrix. But somehow, Jake could sense that his friend's mind was still present, just transformed into something beyond normal human understanding. Integration. Complete! Marie called out triumphantly. Ben has successfully merged with the Genesis engine. The weapon is now fully operational and under his control. The crystal sphere began to pulse with brilliant light as Ben's transformed consciousness took command of the most powerful weapon ever created. Through the station's communication system, his voice spoke to them, but it sounded different somehow, more than human. I can see them. Ben's voice echoed through the chamber. Every HFY ship in the galaxy. I understand how the targeting system works now. I can destroy their entire military fleet without harming any civilian populations. Jake felt tears in his eyes as he realized his friend had succeeded. Ben Turner had sacrificed his human existence to become something new and powerful, enough to save their species from extinction. Ben Turner's transformed consciousness reached out across the galaxy through the Genesis engine's quantum targeting system. His awareness expanded beyond anything human minds were meant to comprehend as he perceived every HFY military vessel in existence. Thousands of ships appeared in his enhanced perception like glowing points of malevolent light against the darkness of space. I can see all of them. Ben's voice echoed through the weapon chamber with harmonics that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Every warship, every weapon platform, every military installation. The targeting protocols are clear in my mind now, Captain. Jake Morrison watched the Genesis engine pulse with brilliant energy as his transformed friend prepared to fire the most powerful weapon ever created. Through the chamber's blast doors, he could hear HFY soldiers fighting desperately to reach them, but it was too late to stop what was about to happen. Chief Engineer Marie Collins monitored the weapon's power buildup with growing amazement. The energy levels are beyond anything I've ever seen, Captain. Ben is channeling enough force to destroy entire solar systems, but he's focusing it with surgical precision. Dr. Elena Cross helped Commander Stone hold the defensive positions as enemy troops broke through the station's final barriers. Plasma. Bolts flew across the chamber while the Genesis engine charged for its devastating strike against humanity's oppressors. Fire when ready, Ben, Jake commanded. End this war. The Genesis engine released its power in a pulse of pure energy that traveled, faster than light itself. The wave of destruction spread outward from the ancient station, carrying death to every HFY military target across the galaxy. Ben's consciousness guided the weapon with perfect accuracy, distinguishing between warships and civilian vessels, with godlike precision. In the space around Earth, Admiral Lisa Grant watched in shock as the massive HFY fleet simply began to disintegrate. Dozens of alien warships that had been preparing to glass humanity's homeworld suddenly came apart at the molecular level. Their hulls dissolved into glowing particles that dispersed harmlessly into space. What in God's name is happening? Grant whispered as she watched the enemy fleet disappear before her eyes. The same scene played out across human space as HFY military forces crumbled simultaneously. At New Geneva Colony, the alien ships that had been bombarding the surface suddenly ceased to exist. Their weapons fell silent as matter itself forgot how to hold the warships together. But the Genesis engine's power reached far beyond human territory. Throughout the galaxy, every HFY military vessel experienced the same fate. Dreadnoughts that had terrorized civilizations for millennia dissolved into their component atoms. Weapon platforms that had reduced planets to glass became clouds of drifting particles. The Kethvar Empire's military might vanish in the span of minutes. Across hundreds of star systems, alien commanders watched their fleets disappear, while civilian populations remained completely unharmed. The weapon had targeted only military technology, leaving everything else untouched. "It's working," Marie announced as she monitored the Genesis engine's performance. The targeting system is distinguishing perfectly between military and civilian targets. Ben is destroying their war machine without harming innocent populations. Through the weapon's quantum link, Ben's consciousness perceived the results of his actions. The Kethvar military caste that had ruled through terror and violence was gone. Only civilian populations remained on their worlds, suddenly free from the warriors who had oppressed them for generations. "The military installations are gone," Ben reported. "I'm detecting surrender signals from Kethvar civilian governments across the galaxy. They're requesting peaceful contact with other species." Jake felt overwhelming relief as he realized the war was truly over. Humanity had not only survived, but had freed dozens of other species from Kethvar oppression. The galaxy would finally know peace after millennia of conquest and genocide. The Kethvar soldiers in the weapon chamber suddenly stopped fighting as news of their fleet's destruction reached them. Their weapons fell from nerveless fingers as they realized their empire had crumbled in minutes. Without their military support, they were just frightened beings far from home. Commander Stone accepted their surrender with dignity. "You're prisoners of war now, but you'll be treated according to human military protocols. The fighting is over." Dr. Cross began treating wounded soldiers from both sides, while Marie powered down the Genesis engine. The ancient weapon had served its purpose and could now rest after ending the longest war in galactic history. "Ben, can you hear us?" Jake asked through the communication system. "I'm still here, Captain," came the reply. "Different than before, but still me. I can feel every quantum connection throughout this station. The knowledge of the eternal builders is part of me now. I understand so much more than I ever could as a human." Jake realized that Ben had not simply died, but had evolved into something beyond human comprehension. His friend existed now as a hybrid consciousness capable of protecting the galaxy from future threats. Over the following days, news of the Kethvar defeat spread throughout human space. Colonies that had been marked for destruction celebrated their survival, while military commanders tried to understand what had happened. Jake's report to Admiral Grant explained the existence of the Genesis engine, but kept many details classified for security reasons. The HMS Retribution became the flagship of a new human fleet dedicated to protecting other species from conquest and genocide. With Ben's consciousness merged with the ship's systems, they possessed capabilities far beyond normal military vessels. The ancient station became a research facility where human scientists studied the accumulated knowledge of dozens of extinct civilizations. Dr. Cross established the Galactic Species Preservation Initiative, using technology from the Eternal Builders to help rebuild worlds destroyed by Kethvar aggression. Former enemy populations reached out for peaceful contact as they adjusted to life without their military oppressors. Jake Morrison was promoted to Admiral and given command of the new Interstellar Defense Force. His mission was to ensure that no species would ever again face extinction from galactic conquerors. The Genesis engine remained operational, but dormant, serving as the ultimate deterrent against future threats. In the quiet moments aboard the Retribution, Jake often spoke with Ben's transformed consciousness. His friend had gained incredible power and knowledge, but retained his essential humanity and dedication to protecting others. "We found our way home, Captain." Ben's voice echoed through the ship's corridors during one such conversation, "and now we help others find theirs." Jake smiled as he looked out at the stars, knowing that humanity had not only survived, but had become the galaxy's guardians. The return of their lost deadly ship had indeed brought salvation, but more importantly, it had given them a sacred purpose that would guide them for generations to come.